Clean up. Sure, but what? Everything from our food consumption to our power sources to our transport, all of this causes waste and pollution. So we could definitely do with some bit of cleaning up. Hello and welcome. I'm Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. Our environment is becoming increasingly unlivable and polluted. So we need to fix that, sure, but we also need to take steps to prevent these problems from happening in the first place. So let's dive into today's episode and take a look at some of the ways this can be done. From the shoes we wear to the bags that we carry our belongings in, we have become heavily reliant on leather to do all of this. However, the processes used to make these goods take a toll on both the environment and the health of the workers and the locals. So, what can be done? Uttar Pradesh's Kanpur is known as the city of leather, and some businesses here are looking for ways to clean up.
Sunita needs clean water, but she knows that all too often the local water supply is contaminated.
Sometimes the water seems clean, but more often it comes out dirty, even green at times, and sometimes it smells strongly of sewage. People here are always falling sick with coughs, fevers, and illnesses that never seem to go away. People always have to take medicines.
Rakhi Mandi is a district in the city of Kanpur in central Uttar Pradesh, the heart of India's leather industry. Toxic chromium sludge is dumped in landfills where it contaminates the groundwater, posing a health risk to the local population. Leather production is a dirty business. Animal hides are treated with chromium salts to make them durable. Chromium salt is a salt of hydrochloric acid which is corrosive. The production process uses high quantities of this heavy metal. A fifth of India's leather production comes from this region. There are hundreds of tanneries in this area alone, and they don't just pollute the groundwater. Some tanneries dump their toxic waste directly in the river Ganges deliberately. This is thought to be the best solution.
Unfortunately, the growth of this industry around the world has been in and around the river bodies because this was considered to be one of the largest water consuming industries of all times. So over a period of time, the concept was that dilution is the best means of taking care of your pollution, and discharge it into the river and it will get diluted. But with population increase, what has happened is that the river contamination has ended up contaminating our drinking water systems.
Every day, the workers here put their health at risk. They often work without any protection. Contact with chromium-3 chloride, the scientific name for chromium salt, can result in skin rashes, itching, and respiratory problems. 31-year-old Wasid Ali has been working with the toxic tanning agents for half his life. The salt makes the skin on our hands blister. Look at these burns. We have to work without safety gear, and even small injuries can lead to serious infections. A friend of mine died recently. He worked with lime. Over time, it damaged his lungs. Doctors said he developed a liver problem too. The city of Unnao is an hour's drive away. The tannery on the banks of the Ganges has been operating for 30 years. Managing Director Taj Alam is trying to make production more environmentally friendly. Meat scraps from the leather are sold to pharmaceutical and cosmetic companies to use in gelatin production. Hair particles from the animal skins are used to make manure. The machine that separates all the substances is highly efficient.
This machine, known as lime water recycling machine, that recycles and reuses water, lime water, for relining purposes. So we save about 600 kl of water per annum by doing this.
He has also dispensed with toxic chrome salt and other metals in the tanning process and only produces vegetable tanned leather.
So we use tanning extracts from trees like cobracho, and mimosa, chestnut, cambier. There are different extracts that come directly from the tree. They are treated and by chemical companies. Most of them come from South America. So yeah, overall the quality of leather is enhanced.
The disadvantage is that natural tanning agents are much more expensive than chromium. Tanneries in Kanpur are now also obliged to recycle wastewater. Taj Alam joined forces with other local tanneries to set up a wastewater treatment plant with the aim of making 80% reusable.
This is our upgraded form of our effluent treatment plant. It's a primary plant, and after the primary treatment, we do the electro-oxidation and electrocoagulation that further reduces the organic load of the pollutants in the effluent, and then it is discharged to common effluent treatment plant, which is about 2 kilometers away from here, through the underground conveyance system.
The government wants tanneries to become more environmentally friendly, but this means these businesses have to produce much less than they could. Otherwise, they risk fines. Back to the many small tanneries on the outskirts of Kanpur. A state-sponsored sewage treatment plant for tanneries has just begun operating here. Now the wastewater goes through a purification process before it reaches the Ganges. The unique aspect of this project is that the chrome, which used to mix with the effluent, is now separated within the tannery itself. It is then sent to a separate plant via tankers. And this plant houses India's largest chromium recovery unit with a capacity of 900 KLD. The Indian government is investing millions in making the leather industry more sustainable. But many small tanneries have given up, unable to raise the necessary financial investment and because they can't afford to work below capacity.
Yet another major source of pollution is the energy that we consume. And half of this need, in India at least, is met through coal, which when burned contributes hugely to greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. However, India is also one of the largest producers of a rapidly growing clean energy source, solar. Let's head to the northern region of Ladakh, which is known for its white desert and mountains, to see how even remote areas are benefiting from solar rooftops.
Business is booming for renewable energy entrepreneur Navang Thinlas. His many employees have their hands full. Solar power is in growing demand in the Union Territory of Ladakh. For the last 2 years, the government in Delhi has been subsidizing solar power systems for homeowners across the country. Now, there is state support from the Ladakh government as well.
I started installing the units around 20 days ago. Since then, I have installed 13 rooftop units. I'm getting a lot of inquiries from customers.
Customers such as homeowner Abdul Ghafoor. He bought his rooftop solar power system with the help of a subsidy of 55,000 rupees, the equivalent of almost 600 euros, around a tenth of the total costs. Switching to green energy was important to him, but in the long run, the system is going to save him money as well.
सपोज अगर हम पूरे दिन में जो है 6 घंटे की बिजली जो सूरज की जो रोशनी आती है.
For example, if we get 6 hours of sunlight during the day, the rooftop solar power unit generates electricity. All our appliances run on solar power. In the evening, we use electricity from the grid. Any surplus electricity generated by the solar rooftop unit is fed into the grid. We'll have no electricity bills because the grid power and solar power offset each other.
ग्रिड से जो हम लेते हैं वो दोनों है आपस में नेट ऑफ हो जाता है. नेट ऑफ होके हमारा जो है बिजली बिल जो है बिल्कुल जीरो हो जाती है. इस वजह से हमने लगाए.
Ladakh is also known as the roof of the world. Even the valleys here are more than 3,000 meters above sea level. Villages are few and far between. The region, including the capital Leh, is home to a population of just 300,000. The village of Somdo, almost 200 kilometers from Leh, is located on the shores of Lake Moriri. In the past, people here relied on diesel generators and wood-burning stoves. Now their energy needs are met by this solar plant. It was paid for by the government, but locals take care of maintenance themselves. Today, it's Dolma Chering's turn. The 38-year-old mother who runs a restaurant spent a week learning how to repair cables and maintain batteries. She says the system has benefited the village hugely.
Solar power has been a huge help, especially at night. It's clean, it doesn't cause pollution, and it's good for the environment. There are 13 houses here and around 70 people living in the village, and solar power benefits all of them.
In just 2 years' time, the Indian government plans to have increased the country's solar capacity to a total of 40 gigawatts. Only around a quarter of this has been installed so far. But here in Ladakh, many schools, hospitals and waste incineration plants are already running on solar energy. And farmers throughout the region have long been helping secure their livelihoods by using solar power in their irrigation systems. Entrepreneur Konchok Norge has made his home completely energy efficient. He's been using a solar panel system for the last 15 years, which he installed with the help of a state subsidy. But that was not the only reason he opted for solar energy.
It's so polluting otherwise if you use, fuel, kerosene, or, if you use bushes from the mountain people use, and the cow dungs and all that are used, which are not supposed to be used to burn.
The polluting effect is even worse up here in the mountains where the air is so thin. What with the new subsidies, it's never been easier to switch to solar energy. The government wants to subsidize solar power units in up to 10 million private homes over the next few years. Ladakh gets some 300 days of sunshine a year. Entrepreneur Navang Thinlas believes the support is a huge opportunity.
I think that renewable energy is a sector that can change the GDP of Ladakh. If you can generate power and sell it to other states, you can increase the income of Ladakh.
According to the Indian public policy think tank, the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, over 250 million households across the country have solar energy capacity on rooftops.
Let's now move to a more traditional source of energy, oil. While the world once worried that we might run out of this black gold, countries now all over the world have pledged to move away from fossil fuels. However, the demand for oil continues to rise. So till how long will this be the case, and when will things actually change?
In 1956, a geoscientist for Shell and professor at Stanford projected that global oil production would peak around the year 2000. This came as a huge shock at a time when oil was driving more and more of the economy. Some people thought it would mean a global financial crisis, and others, a full-on apocalypse. There was talk of high prices for food and fuel, supposed to impact agriculture and electricity. But none of this ever happened. The supply problems that everyone freaked out about never came. So what did happen? And should we be worried about running out of oil? First, looking at this question now is completely different from decades ago because there have been huge changes in our lives. In the early 2000s, we weren't really thinking about life without fossil fuels. Electric vehicles were nearly unheard of. So an end of our oil supply seemed like an existential crisis for the planet. With growing awareness of climate change, renewables have taken off, and the amount of them in the mix has grown hugely. It's now cheaper to generate electricity from solar and wind than from fossil fuels. There's also way more attention on electric vehicles. 14% of new vehicles sold globally in 2022 were electric, compared to just 5% in 2020. Even the United States and China, two huge polluters, are making hefty investments into green technology. And something pretty special happened in 2023.
When we're looking at renewables investment, which clearly has been growing rapidly, and in 2022 met that from fossil fuel, and 2023 far exceeded it.
Mike Coffin used to work for BP and now researches how markets align with climate policy.
And clearly that gap is only set to widen.
While not much would move without fossil fuels, and oil in particular, the future of renewables is looking brighter and brighter. And that has made the end of oil take on a whole new meaning.
If you go back to, say, about 15 to 20 years back, there was a concern that oil supply is going to peak. We're going to run out of oil.
Atul Arya is an engineer and Standard & Poor's chief energy strategist.
Now the concern is somewhat different, which is that we're going to hit a peak or a plateau in demand.
This is a really huge shift. In October 2023, the International Energy Agency published a report predicting the end of oil and other fossil fuels. Only this time, the end is a peak in demand, not supply, and it's predicted to come in 2030. High demand and low supply means a high price. Low demand and high supply means a low price. Oil executives around the world were up in arms over the report. Because less demand with the same amount of supply would mean falling prices for fossil fuels and less profit for the industry. This is a big deal since demand for oil has been growing every year except 2020 when COVID hit. This wouldn't mean that we wouldn't use fossil fuels anymore, rather that it would become much harder to justify new fossil fuel projects. Because our supply of fossil fuels is doing great.
We're not running out of oil and probably not going to run out of oil. Based on the current reserves, we have about 40 years of oil.
And that doesn't even count all the new planned projects. This is mostly thanks to a newish technology called hydraulic fracturing or fracking. Fracking is a process that involves injecting a slushy of water and chemicals into rock, creating tons of tiny cracks. This allows oil and gas to escape and be collected at the surface. The wastewater is then often injected deep underground, which can contaminate the local environment and cause earthquakes. Fracking took off in the United States in the early 2000s, and the country now produces more oil per year than any other nation in the world, so much that it's affecting other countries.
Take Saudi Arabia or UAE or Kuwait, and actually right now, because of so much oversupply in the market, they are producing a lot less than what they can produce.
So on the one hand, we might have an oversupply of oil, and on the other, plateauing demand. Also, investors turning away from fossil fuels. But oil companies are used to expanding, and major oil producers like Shell, Exxon, and Total Energies are all still betting on rising demand.
Data suggested that all companies, I think except maybe BP, were increasing their oil production.
Faye Holder is the lead researcher on a report that investigated oil companies' communication and claims.
Total Energies stated it was forecast to spend 25% of its capex for 2022 in renewables and electricity. But when you look at what that includes, it also includes some kind of gas-fired power.
They may seem like they're shifting towards renewables, but they are actually still banking on a fossil fuel future.
The business operations aren't changing particularly or at the pace needed. They're also lobbying against policies that would force that change or bring it about quicker, but at the same time promoting this very public narrative that they are doing all they can.
State-owned oil companies like Russian Rosneft and Saudi Aramco are also betting on future money from fossil fuels, even though projects approved now may never be profitable. New sites take years to build up infrastructure and to get ready for drilling. In financial terms, they might become stranded assets, something that was invested in but became obsolete.
For some countries, 30 to 40% of entire fiscal budget could be at risk as the transition unfolds or and oil prices fall. That's going to have a massive impact on the economies of these countries and crucially on living standards for those in these countries.
And that impact could also hit individual citizens directly. Many pension funds around the world are invested in oil and gas. If these companies fail spectacularly, millions of people could be plunged into financial insecurity in their old age. So faced with the end of oil, it seems like investing in renewables is the smart financial decision. They're cheaper, and there's less risk of new projects becoming stranded and unprofitable in the future.
So all of that is going to help us move away from oil, but it's not going to be overnight.
Because according to all predictions, we're going to continue to need fossil fuels for a while. They're used as a backup power when wind and solar aren't running, and widespread nuclear isn't likely to come online in time. Transport and energy storage also need to improve for us to be able to quit them entirely. But the more investment goes in, the more renewables improve, and we desperately need that to keep existing on this planet. But we are on the way. It's no longer a question of if, but when. Instead of being concerned about an end to our oil supply, we should be worried about pumping too much of it. With falling demand and a world shifting to renewables, it's not a smart decision, either financially or for our life on this planet.
think of grains and it'll probably be wheat or rice that spring to mind. But these weren't always the crops that farmers relied on. The market share of millets shrank over the years as more commercially viable crops kind of took over. But now this grain is making a comeback. The good news is they're good to eat and good to grow. So what is motivating farmers to reconsider millets? Is it just the market or something else?
Ice cream, a tasty combination of dairy and sugar. But not this one. This one is made from millets. Millets are the grandfathers of modern-day crops like wheat and corn. They are very diverse.
இது வந்து குதிரைவாலி தானியம். இது வந்து இருங்கு சோளம்.
This is barnyard millet, red grade sorghum millet, foxtail millet, and this is kodo millet, which is mostly farmed in this region. In the last 40 years, millets have really reduced. And in this region, cotton and maize crops have completely taken over and made the farmers rely heavily on the market.
விதையில இருந்து விற்பனை வரைக்கும் எல்லாமே மார்க்கெட்டை நம்பி தான் வந்து விவசாயிகள் இருக்க வேண்டிய சூழல் இருக்கு.
Farmer Saravanan Karunanidhi wants to change this and bring millets back. Not only can they be more reliable crops over the long term, but millets are also better for the soil, use less water, and are more nutritious overall. He started a cooperative called Namalwar Organic Millet Farmers Producer Organization to support those that believe in the message and want to make the transition. Our motto is that all the farmers should switch to millet farming and nutritious food should reach people. So initially we asked 7 farmers to implement millet farming in 5.5 acres. Today, we are doing it in 100 acres. At first, we used to organize meetings at various villages to create awareness, but today the farmers are volunteering themselves. We visited a farm in the process of transition with Saravanan. This farm, like many others, had great yields of cash crops when the rain was good, but suffered when it wasn't. As rains get more erratic, the farmer Banumati wanted to change to something more stable, even if that meant no bounties in good years. This is irungu corn. We have farmed it in this entire field. We can use this as a daily food as it is very nutritious. Also, we are feeding the cow, which yields more milk. When we harvest, we also grind the corn. We can prepare rice, upma, pongal, and all varieties of food. Everyone can eat it, young and old, and it's healthy for everyone. This time, we ground out millets and made Diwali sweets and snacks like murukku and laddu all by ourselves. Banumati and other women farmers work together and sell their products directly to the cooperative, who then package it and sell it to final consumers in various cities. They are seeing success as millets are becoming more popular in urban areas. Since we work, it is quite hard for us to process and prepare healthy foods for the kids. But these kind of millet flours makes breakfast much easier and give us the satisfaction of feeding healthy foods to our children.
That children are having healthy food.
Many customers said they're willing to pay a premium for this grain. The UN declared 2023 the year of the millet. But there is a long way to go before they can prove to be economically stable for farmers. They still do not compare to bounty cash crops, which can earn a farmer 4 times more in a year. But it's the other benefits that has some farmers hooked.
சிறுதானியங்கள் வந்து ரொம்ப எல்லா விதத்திலயும் அதாவது நமக்கு இன்னைக்கு வந்து climate
Millets are considered to be climate resilient crops and they hold an important place in long-term food security according to UNO and other organizations. So millets are capable of fulfilling the food demand and supply issues long-term. And since it is a food enriched with nutrients, it can help to eradicate nutritional deficiencies in people. Farmers are ready to do millet farming if they get good support from the government. Farmers in the region are going back to traditional ways to deal with the future. If this works out, millets will make a comeback. Farmers will likely have more reliable crops, and consumers will have a better chance at eating and staying healthy.
How we power our homes and what do we add to our plates, all of this needs to evolve to keep up with the changing needs of these changing times. Let me know what you think and what would you like to see more of on our show. You can email us or reach out to me directly on my social media handles. I will see you next week. Until then, take care, goodbye, namaskar.